Welcome to the Sparked by Hollywood podcast. Today's topic is going to be Hollywood's music and Jewish music. This podcast is all about shining the unique spark beyond the typical and traditional Hollywood love. You know, we're all familiar with Hollywood. We watch their shows, we follow their TV celebrities, and we're also quite obsessed with the daily lives of the actors and celebrities. Of course, the media helps us out by giving us a constant paparazzi lens into their lives, as well as their relationships and their family dynamics. And because these celebrities are in the limelight all the time, we follow them, we emulate them, thinking all the while that their model of love and their model of music, their model of relationships will create our very own paradigm of such things in our lives. But what are they truly exemplifying? What messages are they broadcasting to us all? Do their dreamlike relationships even last? And what is the message that society is actually taking in when it comes to love, relationships, women empowerment, and even Hollywood music? Today, we are joined by a Jewish female singer, songwriter, podcaster, comedian, and superstar, Chanale Fellig. Chanale, it's a true pleasure to have you on the Spark by Hollywood podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, as a public figure, you're probably aware of your as much as, you know, the whatever the what's the word I'm looking for right at the beginning.
It happens. Don't worry. I'm a songwriter and I also look for words.
It's my morning brain. So you have fans across the world. You have fans that reach near and far, and you probably don't know even of all the fans, right? Meaning, I grew up listening to your music way back when it first started, and there weren't any algorithms back then. You didn't know that there's a little girl in Toronto listening to your music and singing along. But I loved it. And you were one of the few back then, few women, Jewish singers who had come out. And we were all excited to have someone that, you know, only the girls can listen to. Now, the Jewish music industry has exploded, and we have so many amazing, talented human beings, women. And I want to know, can you just tell our audience how you started getting into music? What was your inspiration? How did it all begin?
Well, I always loved music. I think all people love music. I think maybe my father is the only human being I know that is not particularly interested in music. Sometimes he listens to Spanish radio and I'm like, why? He's like, I'm not even paying attention. But most of us have a natural affinity for that uplifting feeling or that emotional experience we have when we put on our favorite tracks. I personally left home very early. At 13, I was away from home in high school in Canada. And music was my best friend. Music was my constant companion. I had at first a cassette collection and then a CD collection. And when I used to travel from school back home from Canada to Miami or from Montreal to New York back and forth on the long bus rides overnight, I used to listen to a tremendous amount of music. And I was very appreciative of the songs that were making me feel what I wanted to feel, whether I was lonely and I felt like someone understood that, whether I was struggling with relationships and the song kind of articulated what I was going through, or whether it was just a musical experience that took me away from a more bland, boring high school life where my focus was homework and staying out of trouble. So for me, music was always an escape. It was always more than an escape, though. It was always this presence in my life that just heightened my experience as a human being on so many levels. So you asked how I got into music, specifically writing and composing. I suppose that it was a natural, I suppose it was natural for me to proceed in my passion of music by creating my own. So after listening to so much of it and spending so much time in my room with headphones on, my interest went from buying albums to creating them. I was listening to all the harmonies. I was listening to all the arrangements, and I was thinking to myself, it's incredible how these artists are making me feel what they are feeling as they're singing. Is that something that I could pull off? Perhaps. And that was kind of where the idea, was planted in my brain.
Absolutely. And I think you said something that's really key. You said that when you listened to their music, you felt that they understood you. You understood them. You related to the lyrics. You related to the song and how it was arranged and everything. But you said something that you mentioned that they understood you. And of course they didn't understand you. You were their fan. But I think that's the beauty of songwriters, artists, singers, is that people end up connecting to you as a person. They love you. They feel like, I feel like I've known you. I grew up with you. Like, Chanale gets me. Like, this song that I've been listening to, like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And therefore Chanale gets me, but she doesn't even know that I exist. And I think that's so powerful, because we're going to speak in a few minutes about the paradigm of Jewish music to
secular music.
Hollywood. Secular, exactly. But I wanted to tell you for a moment, I told my girls that I was interviewing today, and I asked them separately what their favorite Chanale song was. And separately, my Adina, who's 14, and Dasi, who's 10, they both said they love May You Be Blessed. And I had texted earlier, I said, that's my favorite song. And it's funny because I used to play it on the way to carpool, and years ago, not even currently. And it's amazing what sinks in to them. And for myself, the message of that particular song and many others just resonates. I love how you start off this song, by the way. It's just so, it's kind of like,
it's so interesting because I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but we'll talk about that in a second. A lot of my music kind of came to be, and the results were far superior than my original intention. And that's just part of the miracle or the magic of making music. But I just want to touch upon what you said about me not knowing who you were and how I was connecting to these artists, not knowing who they were. It wasn't so much that I felt that they knew my personal experience, but I felt like they had the capacity and the talent and the skill and the know-how to capture what I was going through in a song. So sure, they were writing about broken hearts and love and experiences I had not yet had. But for some reason, the emotional journey I was taking while listening to the song was so comfortable. It was such a safe space for me that I just wanted to explore that more. And I kind of wanted the power to do that myself. So when you're saying I didn't know who you were, I didn't know who you were, but I did recognize that the way I was feeling when I was singing, that was going to come through in my recordings and connect me with you, or rather you with me. And that is something that I never took for granted, abused, or even took lightly. I am very, very hyper aware of the power of music. And it's something that I've consistently taken into consideration as I've been recording and writing and performing and now podcasting for the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that leads me to the next question I wanted to ask you. What inspires you? I guess every song would be different. But the messaging is very different. I'm thinking of, the song that you wrote when Razel had passed away, the song that I just mentioned, May You Be Blessed, the song about your daughters when they're growing up, the song, Little Pitchers Have Big Ears. Like, I listened to just as like a background, and then I actually listened to it. I looked at the lyrics and I'm like, this is brilliant. Like, that just like encapsulates like little children and what and what we go through as parents and how we perceive them and how they perceive us. So can you take us back to how you get your inspiration? Is it kind of like instantaneous? Is it?
Okay. Well, I don't write songs in the middle of the night. I don't wake up with some crazy idea that I must get down on a piece of paper. It's just bursting out of me. I don't have songbooks and lyrics scrawled all over on napkins. I'm not that kind of writer, to be perfectly honest. I just want to get in front of that mic and sing. And I love harmony and I just want to record. So I often will sit down and think to myself, okay, let's look at the scope of topics that we can write about in the Jewish world, or in the Jewish, based in Torah, based in Jewish education, stuff that's inspiring. Well, you know what we're not going to write about? We're not going to write about anything Taylor Swift's writing about. We're not going to write about, love affairs and depression and pain, because that's not inspiring. And while it might be relatable, my goal is to create music that's not just relatable, but also holy and purposeful, and music that will stand the test of time. So I think to myself, okay, let's focus on some subjects that maybe haven't been written about. When I wrote the song Sister, Sister, I remember thinking there is no Jewish song about sisters. It doesn't exist. I have 5 sisters. Why isn't there a song on this subject? And I wrote a very light song that turned out to be one of my biggest hits, because there was a song created that wasn't there before. And even in the secular world, there are not that many songs about sisters. And I actually find it increasingly frustrating to listen to secular music. And I just had this conversation with my husband in the car when we were listening to Taylor Swift's new album. Again, I don't listen to secular music, but I do just for research. And I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, besides the fact that the song sounds like it was recorded in a car mechanic's garage, there's no actual instruments on it, the lyrics make no sense. You're at the point when you don't have to draw on something concrete or real. You could just string a bunch of words together and win a Grammy for it, because you're Taylor Swift and you have messages in your song that we just simply don't understand, or we have to listen to it 1,000 times to kind of garner what you're trying to say. So that's something that very much frustrates me. And I constantly force myself to write lyrics, or not force. I constantly make sure to write lyrics that are clear. You don't have to listen to my song and wonder, what is she talking about? And I think that's why people connect to it, because obviously the songs are written well and they rhyme and the music is beautiful, but the lyrics are very clear. I am telling you what the song is about. I'm telling you what the message is, what the purpose is. And you're going to take this song and you're going to be able to use it at your bat mitzvah, at your party, on a bad day, on a good day, before you pray, when you're traveling to Israel. Every single song serves a purpose. And when you listen to it, you know what it is.
Absolutely. And I'm happy that you mentioned Taylor Swift, because that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you. I recently saw, first of all, I do also listen to non-Jewish music in order to see, like, what are we up against? What is out there? What are the messaging? And it seems to me like a lot of the messaging out there is very similar. And it's not inspiring. It's not uplifting. There are some uplifting songwriters, and people love them and they are positive. But I find that because we have lyrics or words from the Torah, like you said, words from Tehillim, that literally anchor us down in history, down to Sheshes Yimei Bereshis, to when Hashem created the world up until now. These are the same words that David HaMelech used. They have given our ancestors back in history the solace, the comfort to go through whatever they're doing. And that connects us as a people. That connects us as a nation. That connects us to Hashem. And I know by saying connecting to Hashem may sound cliche to some, like, oh yeah, whatever that means. And you know what? For each individual, it means something else. But having songs that have this Torah-based value, I think is something that I hold dear to my heart. It touches me over and over and over again, and it it definitely touches others. I know there's a family member who just went his own way. I don't like to call it off the derech, but he's doing his own thing. Every single morning when he drinks his coffee, he listens to Avram Fried songs, because that's what he grew up with. So whatever his ideology is now, whatever his way of life is, and I respect everyone for their choices, but he's holding on to that song, that music that he used to listen to, because that means a lot to him.
Right. Well, there's 2 things that come to mind. First of all, you're saying about listening to music, how he, that kind of anchors him every morning. We play music for our children, before they're born. We're already playing lullabies in the car when we're expecting. There is the concept of culture in our music, and culture in music in general. And what actually separates societies, I would say, almost more than food, is music. You have Eastern music, you have Asia, the music that they're listening to in Asia that we absolutely can understand, identify, or enjoy. Music that has different musical scales than Western music. Right. Mexican music has a lot of distinct sounds that sometimes sound like Hasidic music, and then Hasidic music has some distinct sounds that sometimes sound like music from Russia, like that the Cossacks were singing. So obviously it's intertwined, but at the same time, music very much helps us identify our culture. Now, the word culture is derived from the Hebrew words kol Torah, culture. And when you understand that, you realize that Jewish music is not just our culture, but it encompasses the entire experience we have as Jews, like you said, from the beginning of time until now, and in all its parameters, because how you feel about your Judaism, whether it's pride, whether it's connection, whether it's determination, on whatever level it is, how you feel about it is how you are going to behave towards it and how you're going to tackle the Torah and mitzvos. So if you're in a frame of mind where your heart and mind are full of secular messages or music of other cultures, or maybe music that was created, we don't know the source of all music. There's music from other cultures that were created based on avodah zarah, on music that on spiritual experiences that are completely contrary to our Torah values. We have to be very careful. So it's extremely important to recognize that music is so, so, so powerful. And although it could get a little confusing sometimes when we hear Jewish music that sounds secular or secular influenced, ultimately you're always better off tuning in, pardon the pun, tuning into your own culture when it comes to the soundtrack of your life.
Absolutely.
And when our children are little, especially when our children are little, when, you see children in Asia and India eating soy and tofu for breakfast because that's what they were fed as infants. So if you want your children to grow up on Jewish music, you need to play it in your house from when they're born.
All the time. Have dance parties. Have them singing.
Yeah.
And actually, as you were just speaking, I was thinking of two different songs that actually anchor us and connect us as a Jewish nation. And you could be anywhere in the world. And these two songs that just popped into my head, I'm sure you could think of others. As we know, when the Jews walked to the gas chambers during the Holocaust, we know that they sang the song Ani Mamin. Mm-hmm. We all know the song. We all know that tune that was sang with it. And it just connects us to history, connects us to our ancestors. It could have been any of our ancestors walking at that time. It gives us that feeling of sadness, but at the same time, the feeling of hope and the feeling of, oh my gosh, look what kind of amazing Jewish world we've exploded into, and Jewish pride. And
what's the second one?
And the second one, my husband was actually davening for Chabad of Aventura this past Rosh Hashanah, and every once in a while, it's because it's part of davening, he'd start Oseh Shalom Bimromav. And you have thousands of people there, all walks of life, and the magnitude, the power of the song coming from all different people. It was so palpable. It just moved me, and I'm sure it moved the whole room. And again, just attesting to the longevity of the Jewish people, and that we are all unified, and we have specific songs that connect us on such a strong level.
Right. But just to be realistic, or just to be transparent, the experience can be had with secular music. When I was listening to secular music and going to concerts for a time, there was a time in my teenage years that I went to a couple of rock concerts, or, even a Britney Spears concert. The experience of having thousands of people in a room sing one song at the top of their lungs, it's a deeply spiritual one. And there's a reason why music and drugs go hand in hand in the secular world. So we have to be very careful, because you can have that transcendent experience with secular music. It doesn't only come from Jewish music, because God created all of it. God created every sound on the scale, and every tone and every vibration that comes out of an instrument. So we have to be careful and navigate secular music really carefully, because you can have that experience and perhaps misinterpret it as something deeply spiritual, when really it's just the nature of music. The nature of music is that it takes you to a deeply emotional place. So if you're going to go there, at least do it with people of your community, and with text and lyrics that are derived from a holy source.
Absolutely. And I'm happy you said that because it's true. Like, now we have the World Cup and you have these fans sitting in these stadiums and they sing the national anthems and it is powerful. And when I hear it, I'm like, is that a Frangen or something? Because I'm just like listening on the sidelines as my husband watches. He's like, no, it's a soccer stadium.
That's right.
And talking about Taylor Swift, I just saw a little clip of her on stage the other day or whenever it was taken. And she was actually giving, I guess it was in between songs, and she was giving the crowd some words of inspiration that don't let other people's words or, images of you actually sink into you. You should feel empowered. You shouldn't be responding. So a couple of words. And of course, the crowd roars and the crowd screams and, all in support of what she's saying. But at the same time, I'm looking at her, how she's dressed with a tank top, a crop top and shorts, clearly giving her body off to people. Her image is just right there for people to see. And it's really not, it's very, very revealing. And I'm thinking, is that really the message of empowerment that she's trying to share? And I think that when we have Jewish singers and we have people who dressed modestly and respect their bodies and can still sing and give messages to people without lowering their standards, I think that speaks to people as well. I think that's something that we have unique within the Jewish culture as well.
Well, Taylor Swift, I wouldn't consider her one of the more shameless singers out there. There are a whole host of pop singers that have absolutely no shame and that have lowered the standards of music considerably in the last 100 years. I would say there are no more standards. I mean, considering the lyrics of hip hop music written by women who claim to be feminists and claim to be empowering young girls to find their self-esteems and find their identities. Honestly, the whole thing is twisted and extremely, extremely destructive. And we are so far from those singers recognizing it. I wouldn't even begin to tackle that conversation or try to address it with any of them if I had the opportunity. And there are a number of singers, including Pink, for example. She's a Jewish singer. She recently was on social media making kugel or whatever. Sorry. So even someone like her, she has sung about issues that are completely inappropriate for your average Jewish girl that has any religious connections. And the world swallows it up with every video. Less clothing, more, she pushes the envelope a little bit more when it comes to the topics that she addresses and the communities that she supports. And unfortunately, it's, we're so deeply entrenched in a secular pagan society. I don't even think that I don't think there's one singer out there that hasn't been susceptible to using their either their bodies or their looks or their image. It's a very, very, very hard business to navigate because at the end of the day, you are trying to entertain people and you are trying to keep their attention and you are trying to compete with other artists. And it is a visual experience as well as an audio experience. So, you can't even compare. You can't even compare. So absolutely. My point is that, yes, you are 100% right. It's a beautiful thing to see a woman who has value and self-worth be able to entertain with sequins and with sparkles and with the guitar and dance around on stage like some of these Jewish singers are and not have to compromise her values at all. It can be done, but I don't think the secular world is ever going to understand that fully.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, has your music also reached the secular world? Have you gotten feedback from people who have heard your music, inspired by it, not only in the Jewish circles?
That's a good question. The truth? No. The truth is no, because I never intended to write anything that could translate or cross over into the secular market. And people have told me or suggested to me, why don't you write for Disney? You write for Torah Treasure, you write for Tovido, you write such cute children's songs. For a number of reasons. Number one, there is a fully saturated market out there, and I absolutely don't have the capacity to compete realistically. Like, I'm in a good place in my own market, and to put myself out there and try to get attention or garner attention from the secular world, it is such an uphill battle. And I'm not even sure what it would actually bring my way except controversy I don't think it would prove worthwhile.
Yeah.
And also I tend to, like I said earlier, to focus very much on my audience when I'm writing. And I don't know what I would say to the world at large, except
Yeah.
stop taking your clothes off. So I never wrote with the secular market in mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it would be interesting to know if, there are people out there listening and do get inspiration even from the song like Sister Sister, which is pretty much universal. Do you have any?
The podcast is where it's at. The podcast has definitely crossed over to a wider audience. And that's one of the reasons that I started the Weekly Squeeze. So yeah, I do care for these things. I do want to have a voice that's far reaching, but I don't think it's ever going to be through my music.
Understood. And you mentioned your podcast. Can you give us also a glimpse how your music and podcast fuse, or how the podcast started?
Totally. Well, the podcast, it started off as like an experiment, like, let's see if I could pull this off. And then I don't even know why I thought that I couldn't, because I generally have a competitive streak. And as soon as I started realizing there's something called podcast charts, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to be on the top 10 of that. And slowly but surely, that was the goal. And I think it's directly a result of singing for women only, because that was such a wonderful experience. Don't get me wrong. It was absolutely positive. I have no regrets. I absolutely love singing for women. I would never sing for a secular crowd or for a male crowd. This is my niche. These are my people. These are my fans. I love everyone, all of you and your daughters. But podcasting gave me the opportunity to really expand the conversation. There are a lot of things at this stage of the game that I have learned. I am very interested in world affairs, in the news, in pop culture media, in Jewish music as a whole, in what's going on in our societies. I am on social media. I made Aliyah. I'm very passionate about, a number of important causes that are close to my heart. And podcasting just gave me the opportunity to say it and not have to play it and not have to sing it. I could just speak my mind, and obviously record it professionally, because I do know how to record, and that's, what I do. And it's been a natural continuation of me having a voice in the Jewish community. So far, so good. Obviously, there are people who listen to my music and feel one very specific way about me, and then listen to my podcast and suddenly feel something very different, because there's a lot of ideas being recorded and shared. And every single week, twice a week, I have an hour of my opinion. So that's something that I have to accept as reality. I might have listeners that get turned off and be like, this is not necessarily the Chanale that I want in my earphones right now. At the same time, I am proud to be consistently, consistently consistent with my messaging, both in my songs and in my podcast. You will find a part of me in my podcast as you will in my music. It's all there. I'm not a different person. It's just a different way.
And what I love about your podcast is that you're completely unapologetic. You're just you're funny. You have amazing guests on. You have amazing topics. And like you said, you're getting Chanale. So if you want the full picture and you want to be part of it, so listen. But I think as podcasters, we know that we're not always going to be touching upon every single person, and not everyone's going to love it. And that's okay. We don't have to be a one size fits all.
That's right. Right. Listen, at the end of the day, everyone has the prerogative to tune in or tune out. For me, again, I don't record anything, not my voice, not my speaking voice or my singing voice, without taking my audience into consideration. I don't just sit here shooting the breeze, speaking my mind and hoping that people tune in and like me for it. I know that people who are listening, my voice matters to them. And I want to, and I never want to mislead people, misguide them, or make them have, negative thoughts about important things like the Torah, Judaism, and our society. So I take all those things in consideration. And perhaps that's what my audience is, once again, understanding about me. I really care about you listening. This is not about me. Sure, it's fun. Sure it is. But the responsibility is always there. I have it here on my wall. Hang on a second. I have a list of things I wrote on my wall. Whenever I record my podcast, I take a look at it. I wrote, have fun, because, make it meaningful, be honest. The Torah has all the answers. Make them laugh. And then I wrote, sell some stuff with a money sign. Those are that's the list I check before I record anything.
Authentic and unapologetic. I love it. And I love that you had Candace Owens on your show. I'm trying to get her on mine. I love how you put it out there. And again, the questions that you asked her were questions that probably all of us wanted to ask. So you were not only the voice of Chanale, you were the voice representing other people, other Jews who have those same questions, but you were able to, in a sense, represent us and others who want to hear, who want to ask her those questions and hear her response.
Well, I got some slack for that one. I'm not going to lie, because everyone had a different opinion of how I should have gone about it. Most of my audience was pleased. I think people in general are intimidated by her, and they would never have the guts or nerve to even open their mouth in her presence because she is a fireball. So the fact that I pulled it off, well, okay, that's cool. But there are people who are harsher critics and who are like, well, you didn't say this and you should have said that and you should have taken her to task for this and you should have, pushed back on that. And it's easier said than done. And it's something that I'm also learning myself. I'm not Megyn Kelly, and I'm testing new territory with these interviews and the like. But
you should, Kelly.
The Jewish Megyn Kelly. I'll need to change the color of my wig, but maybe one day. But ultimately, again, I definitely sat down thinking, no matter what happens in the next 45 minutes, I will not be aggressive towards her. I will not be nasty. I will not misrepresent the Jewish people. And I will try to share with her the very human side of the Jewish community who right now are suffering from anti-Semitism. And at the end of the day, you could bring a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. So I could say whatever I want. I cannot prevent or encourage her or influence her to do anything in the future just because I had a conversation with her. And people keep messaging me, did you see what you said now? Did you see what you said now? Okay, so therefore what? I don't own her. I had a conversation with her. I said my piece. How she deals with it from here on forward, that's on her.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah, I was actually listening to another recording that I had interviewed someone else on my podcast, and they were saying something which is not my opinion, and I was like, should I edit it out? And I'm like, no, that's them speaking. That's their opinion. They can use my platform to say what they want. Is it truthful? Is it not? It doesn't make a difference. I ask the question, they answer. I want to shift back to your music. Is there any particular song that you love, that you connect to most over others?
I've been asked that question many times, and I don't, everyone does the standard answer. Do you love any of your kids more than others? No, but some kids I definitely want to hang out with more than others because they just are easier. Some songs came easier. Some songs are recorded better. Some songs really connect me to a point in my life that I want to revisit from time to time, like the song I Am the Land. When I made Aliyah, I recorded I Am the Land, and that song, just every time I put it on, we take road trips with the kids here in the land of Israel, and my husband cranks it up, and I'm like, you really want to hear it again? And they're like, yeah, we want to hear it again, because it just brings everybody to that space where I am the land, I am our oceans, Israel belongs to me, you can't take it away from me. And it's just a very, very powerful song that a lot of people really connect to. That said, the song I'm Going to a Wedding from Bella Bracha is one of my most popular little ditties, and I'm super proud of that one, because every time someone goes to a wedding, they're singing, I'm going to a wedding, a wedding, a wedding. I'm like, oh, that's my great little song. That's so catchy. And it's harder to write a preschool song than you would imagine, or a little kid song than you would imagine. I have a course on songwriting. Now, I'm not going to pitch it here. You could reach out to me if you're interested. But what I discovered when I was putting together the content for that course is that professional songwriting is very, very different from most people's experience in writing songs. And as a professional songwriter who gets paid at this point to write songs, my approach is very, very almost scientific, and the word is slipping my mind, but I have a plan and I have a procedure, and I need to get from A to Z at this date and deliver the customer, the client, a song that they want and that makes sense for whatever project they're working on. So I don't I really am proud of myself when I can pull that off in a specific time frame and it's good. And sometimes that song has nothing to do with me. It could be a song about a bar mitzvah boy, but I am very impressed with the way that I was able to put it together. And those are the songs that I'm usually like, oh, look at me, all fancy professional songwriter.
Right.
Yeah.
And, to the point of the fact that, you said that when you play the song I'm a Land for the kids and for your family, it brings you back to that moment. And I think that there are specific songs that any individual could connect to. And either it reminds them of the first time they heard it, or just the words always bring up this emotion. And the song that A.B. Rottenberg sings, Come With Me, Little Neshamala. This was a song that when I was birthing my kids, I had it playing over and over again, because I actually was leaning into the moment of bringing my neshama into the world. And a number of years ago, I was experiencing an ectopic pregnancy. And when I found out that I was pregnant, they told me I was about 8 to 10 weeks pregnant. I didn't know. I was just experiencing all this pain and I didn't know what was going on, and and a ton of spotting. So by the time I came to the hospital, and they're like, oh, by the way, you're pregnant. And then they did an ultrasound and they said, well, we detect a heartbeat. And because they detected the heartbeat, they said the only way to remove the fetus was through surgery. They couldn't just give an injection. So I hear words and I always think of songs. So I hear the word heartbeat and I think of Nechama Cohen's song, Heartbeat. And it just starts playing and my maternal instincts kick in, because all of a sudden I realize I'm carrying a baby. There's a baby inside of me and I need to care for it, even though it's only here for another 2 hours. So I have the song, the lyrics of the Heartbeat song. And then I started, it kind of went back and forth to Come With Me, Little Neshamala, and the part of the song where we're going to go to a place above the land. And it was just in that moment of pain, fear, uncertainty. At the same time, my kids were home and I had to arrange something for them, but I'm going through all this turmoil and I have this baby inside of me and it's going to be leaving. And music actually anchored me into the moment, into my role as a mother, my role as a Jewish woman, because I had an neshama inside of me and Hashem was taking it back home. And that just gave me...
I'm on a Zoom. I know, I'm on a Zoom. I'm sorry. I'm on a Zoom and I have children who don't seem to understand that I'm on a Zoom. Go ahead. But but I'll tell you. Okay. But on that, I will tell you, I had a conversation with A.B. Rottenberg about Little Neshamala, and he wrote that song following a loss of somebody close to their family. I think there was a teenager that was friends with their children. I don't remember exactly. It was a couple of years ago since we spoke about it. And it was a very, very meaningful song to him. And he did not write that song off the cuff. This was a song that was crafted carefully to reflect the experience of a soul coming into this earth and then leaving this earth. And that goes to show that a song that is written with purpose and deliberation and, where every single word is considered and valued as part of the creation of this song, the song takes on a life of its own. And someone like you can use it and it becomes manifested in this birth experience that you have, or not, this emotional experience that you had in such a powerful way. And that's why Jewish music just transcends anything that the secular world has to offer.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point to wrap up on. I had a great time chatting with you. Again, I've been a fan since the 90s. I think that's when you started, but regardless, when I was growing up. And just thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for your gift of music. Thank you for everything you bring to the world. You are a true superstar in all senses of the word. And it was a pleasure having you on my podcast.
Absolutely my pleasure. And keep doing it. Slow and steady wins the race. And if you're passionate about it, you will also join me up on the charts soon enough. But ultimately, I just want to reiterate to anyone listening or to everyone listening that Jewish music is our culture and we should be proud of it. And just like we don't tell ourselves, oh, there's not kosher restaurants that have better meat and there's not kosher vineyards that produce better wine. We don't even go in that direction. We focus on our kosher restaurants and our kosher wines and our kosher music. And when we do that, and that's something that you're doing with this show, when we draw the focus back on the excellence that we have to offer, we can truly enjoy the talent at our fingertips. And there's so much of it. There really is. There's so many wonderful artists and podcast hosts and wonderful contributors to our society. So, you don't have to look too far.
Absolutely. And if you can tell our audience how they can find you, how they can connect with you on your platforms as well.
Sure. You can Google Chanale. I am easy to find. Chanale Music on Instagram, Twitter, just pretty much everywhere. The Weekly Squeeze podcast. And yeah, I'm always happy to connect.
Amazing. It was a pleasure. Go enjoy your kids.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And don't cut anything out. It's okay if people know that superstars also have children that interrupt their Zooms. That's life, Being a mother is my biggest role. So that's where I really have to shine.
Love it. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. Bye.